Welcome back, everyone, to another Kingscrowd podcast. My name is Brian, your host, and joining me today, as always, we have Scott, Leah, and Teddy. These are different team members and industry insiders from Kingscrowd who are looking at all of these deals each week, bringing you the insights, the news, and the analysis that you are looking for. Whether you're that founder raising capital or whether you're an investor looking to find online investment opportunities. Now, today we wanted to kick things off and talk about a very exciting event that Kingscrowd is going to be hosting coming up September 29th to October 2nd. That is Investment Crowdfunding Week. Investment Crowdfunding Week 2025, we like to say this is where founders meet capital and investors meet opportunity. So Kingscrowd is in a really unique position, right? Because where we are in the market, we look and oversee all of the deals, investment crowdfunding deals that are coming available online. And we are in contact with the platforms, with the marketing agencies, kind of seeing what's happening behind the scenes. This is our opportunity and our hope to bring a lot of this discussion and bring it to you, the investors, the founders, the industry professionals, to be able to get you a little bit of a sneak peek kind of behind the scenes in terms of what works for raising capital, what works for investing, how do you find good deals. So there's going to be a lot of really great takeaways throughout the week. Now, this week, again, it's September 29th to October 2nd. There's going to be a bunch of different panel sessions each day, as well as pitches from 40 or more companies. Now, Scott, I know you're also going to be partaking in a few of these sessions. I think it's really interesting as well. So the one, right now, uplisting to IPO, the growing path to going public. Can you say a little bit just about what you're looking forward to, what you think both founders and investors might be able to take away from this week on Investment Crowdfunding Week?
Yeah, I mean, one, it's going to be fun to join the stage with Chris, which is something I don't think we've ever done before, which is kind of cool. The reality of the world is IPOs are not as frequent, and when they are, companies have been around long enough that the private markets have taken up most of the potential gains. And so the shift using equity crowdfunding is a beginning piece, but like Reg A, Reg D, mini-IPOs, tokenization, tokenized security, there's so many new things coming out that enable retail investors to get access to opportunities well before what would be the IPO. And I think it's going to be exciting to talk about sort of like what the next generation of retail access is going to look like from not just startups, but just private asset environment. I think also worth mentioning, just because of the timing of this, it should be falling right around the same time that Vlad from Robinhood is doing their quarterly. And he literally was on shows all week this week talking about the different opportunities that he'd like to see for late stage pre-IPO companies to have retail access because of this elongated IPO roadmap, which is like perfect timing. We're going to be talking about it at the exact same time that he's talking about it in front of millions. So I'm really excited about learning a little bit more and sharing what we know about sort of what the future of going public means.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think there's already been a few examples this year, Newsmax being one of the big ones that made a big splash, raised $75 million in Reg A, uplisted on the NASDAQ, but lots of other ones. And I've heard...
Don't forget Boxable. Don't forget them.
Boxable, that's right. They announced their SPAC. There's, if anything, there's a lot more people being aware of this because I think for a lot of founders are like, Reg A, what is that? And now it's like, oh, there's, some big companies, at least names, that are driving more interest in it. So it'll be curious, and I will be very fascinated just to hear some of the discussion around like where we see that going. So again, if you're an investor, if you're a founder, an industry professional out there, we're going to be sharing lots more kind of as we announce some more of the speakers coming up in coming weeks, but head over, sign up. If you're on our mailing list, you've already been getting the first kind of pre-release, sign up calls to action. So make sure you're signing up and saving the date. In addition, I think that there's going to be lots of more good opportunities. So definitely stay in the loop, and we will be announcing some of those other speakers and sessions as they come up. Now, one of the other things I do want to mention, just in terms of one of the sessions that actually both Teddy and Scott here are going to be a part of as well, are the sports and entertainment startup pitches. So we're not just bringing the traditional, operating company, so to speak. We really want to surface some of these different alternative investment opportunities and how some of these deals are being structured in really interesting ways. For example, one of the things that was recently announced on Republic is Waterfalls. This is Ron Perlman. Probably a lot of people know that name, know that actor. Basically, this is a new film production platform that is raising capital under Reg CF today. Now, we've seen a bunch of kind of similar things to this, but also different in their own ways in the past, right? So a lot of investors and founders out there might be familiar with Legion M. They've done probably half a dozen, if not more, raises. There's been a number of additional kind of productions and films that have been investment crowdfunded. For example, on Angel Funding, which is a platform that has been very, very successful. I'll put a small teaser in there for next week's chart of the week. We'll be diving into some of the data around the entertainment and specifically around some of these deals that have been doing well, not only from a capital raising perspective, but actually returning to investors. So some of the most successful returns to date from an IRR perspective have actually been some of these entertainment deals and these film deals that we'll be talking about in next week's chart of the week. But bringing it back to this, so that is going to be one of the sessions at Investment Crowdfunding Week. Scott, I want to toss it back over to you. If we're taking a look at Waterfall and just opportunities like this, maybe you can talk us through just a little bit like why this is interesting for investors. What are some things they might want to look at when considering deals like this, and just broadening awareness for investors in terms of these types of opportunities?
Yeah, thanks. Well, before getting into Ron Perlman and Waterfall, I want to go back a little bit to this Investment Crowdfunding Week. The sports and entertainment pitches are going to be awesome for a myriad of reasons. One, it is just a very, I think, well recognized. We've talked about it 3 times out of the last 5 or 6 shows here. Just the different types of ways in which sports and entertainment, sports teams, individual players, creators are beginning to monetize themselves in different ways and make themselves more accessible to not just like sponsorship revenue or income, but like actual investment and potential returns. We've obviously talked about it already with Finley and others, good and bad, investing in players' rev-shares. We talked about Gigastar a few weeks ago, raising 3.6 or 3.7, whatever it's at now, $1 million, and enabling you to invest in effectively the YouTube royalties and YouTube ad income for creators. We are looking at Perlman, and again, we've talked about Legion M, we've had them on the podcast. We are talking about, and also I should just mention, this also includes sports teams that you can invest in. I think there was Watford or whatever on Republic. There's been Pressman Films is another one that was on Republic. Like Republic's clearly going in the direction, at least a little bit of this movies and entertainment. I just think that we've entered a world where every person's algorithm is different. Every person's Instagram is different, and it's made movie making and creator and content just very difficult. We all live in these own little worlds. And so for that reason, and I think, far better than me to say it, check out the podcast with, Matt Belloni on The Town. It's a Ringer podcast or Puck podcast, I forget. Check it out because he talks about this all the time. In fact, he's featured some of these people. The gist of it is for film studios, houses, even sports leagues to monetize and raise capital for a new expansion, they either need one massively wealthy person or recognizable name, Serena Williams, I like to say, and her husband or his, the Mr. Williams, the Reddit founder, Alexis Ohanian, or Tiger Woods for TGL, it goes on and on. It is very difficult to fund anything but a Marvel movie, anything that's got a proven track record of success. And if you watch the last, we're coming up on all the film festivals in the fall are going to pop up. And my guess is you're not going to have a lot of Marvel stuff. You're going to have independent films. You're going to have films that, in my opinion, have like more depth to them. They're what certain people want to see. However, because of how they're set up and because they don't have a history of making money yet, it's very hard to fund for these things. And this is just expands even into creators on YouTube. Like everyone has a different thing. And so what you're starting to see happen is all of these different sites popping up and taking on a different perspective. There's a company called Kino Studio, which I invested in. They're not crowdfunding, but they allow you to basically pay early money to see shorts and films. And then if they make enough money on the short, then they'll produce a real film. That's one way to go about it. We talked about Legion M. Most of these are coming from the producer, the director, some cases the actor. Perlman is coming at this from actually the fan perspective, which I think is really unique. It's basically, here's an idea or a concept pitched by someone, presumably a director, producer, actor, idea, creator, writer. and then the fans vote on it. And if they really, really like it, then it can go into this place where Perlman's platform Waterfall actually manages the fundraise. So the difference between, say, Legion M and others is that like they themselves are raising capital for their own films, or in the case of like Pressman and Robert Rodriguez's recent film, where they go to Republic and they say, Republic, you do it. He's building his own platform and saying, you bring ideas to us, and the fans can fulfill whatever creative ideas they like. And I think this is a trend you're going to start to see happening more and more and more. And it goes back to this, like Gigastar as an example. It goes back to creators starting to treat themselves more like businesses and entities and not just random people online, realizing that it takes upfront capital and investment to expand what you're doing and to take the risk of potentially bouncing the algorithm off of you for a moment while you try something new. You're allowing your fans to say, hey, this is awesome. I'd like to see more. And you can say substantially like, invest in me, and we will do that. And I generally think you could go all the way back to 2020 or 21 with fan-controlled football, which ran on Republic, I believe, where fans could control the football game. Ultimately, it got a lot of pub and had like 1 or 2 seasons, but it didn't work out. But the gist was, we are getting into a phase of life where everything is far more direct engagement, and the creators and the fans are going to have a much bigger say and play into what finds itself on YouTube or on the big screen or on a video game or even potentially in an arena. And I think this is just the first step towards like actually giving them ownership. And if I'm being, I like to keep things glass half full, but if I have to close on one thing here, this is also a way to not take a huge risk and let the fans basically show how badly they want this. If people really genuinely want this kind of access and ability, then they will invest in these kind of platforms like Waterfall or Gigastar or FCF or any of the other ones, Finley, etc. And if they truly are not that interested in it, then they won't. And then we can, stop with these kind of gimmicks or whatever they are.
As an investor, when you're looking at these, you definitely need to understand what you're investing in, because some of them, right, you're just helping this film. You are financing the upfront cost for a certain film, and then whether it does well or not, you might get a rev share, and that's that. Some of them, you're investing more in the company, the platform that may own a portfolio of these films. So I don't know, Scott, if you know a little bit more about Waterfall in particular, of how this one's structured, but like if you were looking at these, and it sounds like you've invested in some of these media, platforms and different companies, like what are the types of things that as an investor you're looking for?
Well, I like to see people who are real, who've been in like the big room making big decisions, because I think generally one of the biggest problems that has happened with some of these sites and why they haven't really worked out is that you get a lot of people who are very hopeful. They want to disrupt how things happen, but they don't realize the chain of command and the chain of the dollar and where things go and flow. They don't understand the complexities of YouTube and streaming and who gets rights to what and how much marketing budgets are settled and how they get paid back and just all of the complexities, let alone negotiating the actors. The same can be said for sports, and I really mean this in a respectful manner. I don't know how it's going to come across, but like if you look at athletes in sports, for the better part of our entire lives, it's all been kind of hustler mentality, kind of behind the scenes, AAU, it's a friend of a friend of a friend, the coach, payola, whatever. NIL has kind of surfaced it a little bit, but players have never had real control of this. And so you start looking at these platforms like Finley and others, and there's a bridge of like, I understand the agent game and I know how money changes hands and how sponsorships with Nike are run and how this works. And I don't. And if you do know how it works, then you have a much higher chance of success, I believe, than someone who's like, this is unfair and there's a better way to do this. That usually doesn't translate. So what I would look for is people who've been in agents, worked at CAA, worked for Ari Emanuel's Endeavor, been close to the top of the major leagues, whether that's NBA, NFL, things like that. You want to see people who have already kind of seen, how a dollar gets put in the piggy bank and how it comes out of the big hole in the bottom. That's the first part. The second thing is just access to taste. Again, this isn't maybe what people want to hear, but it's a fact. Like, I love certain types of independent film. That doesn't mean that I don't think it should all be made. There's something for everyone. But if I'm an investor, it's like investor first, philanthropist second. If I'm just a person who's a patron of the arts, there's sites over there for you to donate to orgs that are going to distribute capital to give people, money to go build ideas. And I'm sure one out of a million of them might hit and make money for people, and that's wonderful. This is an investment game. And for retail investors, I hope that they understand this is investment. This isn't just wishful thinking. And so I want to see movies that have a legitimate shot of success. And by the way, I'm shocked that we haven't seen these same platforms for newsletters and podcasts and everything else. They probably will be. Maybe that's what Gigastar's goal is to eventually get to that kind of area, or Republic is building this entertainment arm. Maybe they'll get there. But the bottom line is there is something to be said for the Marvel movie universe, and there's something to be said for like big name actor. So you got to have somebody who is big enough to carry an audience, that is close enough to something that can be franchised, that has something creative or different that appeals to a large volume of people. And I think you saw that with Pressman. I think you saw that with the recent one that was run on Republic with Rodriguez's film. You bring the whole Tarantino crowd. That universe comes with you, and you know how it's working. So like at minimum, films like that will probably be funded enough to be made. And that's the biggest thing here that's different from startups and other things you see running on these platforms. A lot of times these guys will raise money, but by the way, enough to be the minimum to take the money, but not enough to actually complete the product or the project. Whereas in startups, in the olden days, like 2015, 16, 17, you would see that a little bit on these platforms. People would invest, but then the company would never really get off the ground or launch because they ran out of money. Now that's almost unheard of. The companies are up and running, they've got business, they've got something going, and then they're raising a little extra money. It's entirely feasible in the case of the movies that no movie's ever made and your money's just gone and there's nothing you can do. Similarly, you can invest in athletes on Finley or whatever, and they don't even make it to the league and there's no money, no returns. Same thing with Commonwealth and other things where you're investing in horses. Like anything can happen here. So it's really important that investors are fully aware that this is not the same thing as investing in an asset or a company. It's a different kind of asset. This whole segment, I think, has probably the most growth potential outside of the continued growth in the energy, equity crowdfunding energy universe. I think those are the two biggest areas of just absolute massive growth because they're just non-traditional.
Now, Leia, I know you actually did a chart, if we go back, the data, just looking kind of entertainment raises, and we're teasing a little bit that we're going to be taking a look at some of the data next week in the chart of the week that looks at some of these. But anything you want to say just in terms of the data of trends or anything else with entertainment kind of based raises moving forward?
I think I shared that in our latest podcast. I was very surprised to see that some of the most successful deals were actually in the media and entertainment category. I think we had Angel Studio that raised about $20 million. We had David, which was a movie that raised $55 million, and then Newsmax that raised $75 million. So one of the most successful deals ever. And something that I think since I entered into the equity crowdfunding market about 4 years ago really has been hitting me is that a lot of the movies that are funded on equity crowdfunding are actually Christian and religion-related movies. It's something that was very different for me because coming from France, we don't really have a lot of movies related to religion. And here, it seems that there really is a public that want to fund movies that are faith-based. And it's very interesting to see because when these filmmakers are raising online, they already have the public, and the public is already dedicated. They already want to watch this movie, and so they're going to fund it. And so it's just fascinating to see how equity crowdfunding can really allow this niche to emerge without them having to go to institutional investors, but just pulling the money from their public.
Yeah, talk about like a sleeper platform, but angel funding. Look at the number of raises that are over 2 million. There are very few platforms that can say that they've had multiple raises hit the 5 million max, or at least in excess of 2 million. And then we'll be getting into the data next week, so we'll dive deeper. But again, some of these are the ones, if you go to the Kingscrowd exit and failure tracker, some of these have returned 1.5x, 2x money within like weeks or 2 months or 3 months, which maybe 1.5x, 2x doesn't sound like a lot. When you figure out the like annual growth rate of that over a 2-month period, it's a fantastic return. So very interesting for sure. We'll definitely be looking at more of that. Before we wrap up, Scott, any last words, last thoughts in terms of either investment crowdfunding week and or where we're going with the discussion on the entertainment?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about investment crowdfunding week because for the first time, this is not like there's been years of these events in our industry, but they're always internal facing. Very rarely, if ever, have these ever been conferences that are externally facing. And I think this is exciting because it's the first time that I am familiar with something that is very like 100% built for the retail community, the retail investor community, and not for us within the inner circle of investment crowdfunding, private online markets, retail, whatever you want to call it. Like basically of self-aggrandization and like showing us who's doing what. This is cool. It's going to be something where if you're interested in investing in whether it's crowdfunding or alternatives, or super curious as to why all this talk about tokenization, why regulatory conversations have been going on, why you've seen all this in the news, people doing private credit, big firms, big names you've never associated with this space before all of a sudden being talked about. This is a place to learn. This is a place to ask questions. It's multi-day. It's virtual. There's no excuse not to go, or at least sign up. And if you don't like it, sign off. It's amazing. Just don't do that with the sports and entertainment one because it's been great. So yeah, really excited about that and happy to be a part of it. And as far as Waterfall and the rest of these, like I don't know. I'm not vouching for it. I haven't looked into it enough to say I've invested in it or I won't or whatever. I probably would just say that it's just a continuation of this trend that I just think everything is getting more and more personalized, and content and all this stuff is no different than the rest of it. So I guess keep your eyes peeled. It's nice to see that they've raised quite a bit of money pretty quickly. So kudos to Republic team.
Yep. And, come back to Kingscrowd. So we'll keep you in the loop, and we'll definitely give you the latest in terms of as we see trends like this that are happening, whether you are a founder raising capital or an investor looking for opportunities. We're going to make sure to highlight these, pull them out, analyze some of them, and just talk about the trends and the insights that we're seeing. So let's end things there. Thank you very much for this week. Just as a reminder, and I'm sure we'll drop a link, in the chat below this. So for anyone who is watching this who hasn't already saved the date, make sure you sign up for Investment Crowdfunding Week, September 29th to October 2nd. And if you haven't already, join the Kingscrowd newsletter. You'll get all of these great insights every single week delivered right to your inbox. We'll see everyone back here next week. Thanks.